Okay, folks, here we go. The Zoopla UK House Price Index for February 2024. This is Zoopla's index. Now, a really good insight into the housing market as it stands right now, where we are right now in terms of house prices. But this is all down to Zoopla. Remember, this isn't the UK House Price Index as opposed to the Land Registry, but it's Zoopla's one. And I think it's probably one of the nearest ones to where we give an accurate account of what's happening in the market right now in terms of property. Because Zoopla is a huge property website, they gather a huge amount of data and they distill it into this report itself. And that's why I think it's so important. You know, nationwide, Halifax, yeah, okay, but it's only between their customers, whereas a lot of people and a lot of traffic is driven to Zoopla, which is significantly more overall. And I think that's probably the second best one as opposed to the actual UK House Price Index for Scotland, England, and Fife itself. But let's get the show on the road and talk about where we are in terms of the property market, property prices, and I'll give you a good indication. Okay, the executive summary for Zoopla. They're actually saying UK house prices slows to minus 0.5%. No surprise on rising sales volumes. So they're seeing rising sales volumes, which means there's more supply, therefore demand starts to drop, therefore prices start to stabilize or slightly reduce. Hence the reason why they're saying it slows to minus 0.5%, but it's not a huge amount in comparison. All the measures of activity higher with sales agreed up 15%. That's what Zoopla is saying again. All measures of activity higher with sales agreed up 15%. A fifth more homes for sale than last year as sellers return to the market. So there's more supply coming in again. This is a message coming across. 7 regions with positive annual price inflation. Price falls in 5 of those regions as well. There's a 3-tier housing market split between southern England, London, and the rest of the UK, and it's really all driven by affordability. Activity boosted by falling mortgage rates, which are beginning to plateau out a bit. You know, some of the lenders are actually recently increased their interest rates a small amount on their offers, but it's only marginal in comparison. We'll talk about how that might affect the housing market overall. Zoopla goes on to say, we expect more sales in 2024 rather than faster price growth. In other words, more sales will happen as opposed to 2023, which was down about 26% right across the UK, down about 17% in Scotland in terms of transactional numbers. That tends to be the health of the property market, the transactional numbers, rather than the price. The price is good from the point of view that if you want to borrow or you want to upgrade or downgrade and you've got a mortgage, therefore you've got more equity in there and you don't lose that equity as a result if prices start, because prices aren't dropping. So you really want to stabilise your place on the housing ladder as such, but you also were able to trade like for like when house prices go up, because as yours goes up, someone else you're buying goes up, and vice versa. Zoopla finally says in their executive summary that sales momentum has been recovering for 5 months, and we are on track for 10% more sales, 1.1 million in 2024 than last year itself. This is actually quite interesting. So overall headline stats we've got here, you can see above me, minus 0.5, plus 15, as I said, and the higher sales agreed, and plus 21% in the number of stock of homes for sale overall. Let's just jump on to the next one. This is the sales market metrics up on 2023 across the board. So this is it compared. So percentage change 4 weeks to February 2024 compared with the same period in 2023. So this is compared against the same period for the start of the year from 2023 to 2024. So in other words, from January the 1st to right now, which is the 18th of February, Zoopla took this up to. So as opposed to last year, buyer demand is up. Surprising, quite surprised about that, considering the mortgage rates were a lot different last year, a lot lower. Number of sales agreed is up. Flow of new supply is up, which means more coming onto the market. Hence the reason why the stock of homes for sale has gone up 21% year on year. which means if there was 100 properties for sale last year, there'll be 121 for sale this year, to give you an idea about the stock of homes for sale and how that goes up. Sales market continues. So the sales market activity continues to improve, according to Zoopla. We could probably see that anyway. All measures of sales market activity continue to improve as pent-up demand returns to the housing market. It's getting brighter outside, literally. We are now 6 o'clock. The sun will set after 6 p.m. now, and the next time the sun will set before 6 p.m. will be around about 28th October. So we are now moving into spring and summertime. This is the season for selling. So as pent-up demand returns to the housing market, buyer demand is 11% higher than a year ago. A better indicator of market health is sales agreed, which according to Zoopla is saying, better indicator of market health is the number of sales agreed, which are 15% higher than a year ago. Evidence of greater buyer confidence and more realism on pricing by sellers. The Northeast, for example, up 17%, London up 16%, have led to a rebound in sales. So these markets are actually realizing that the days are long gone of huge meteoric rises in prices. It's now a stabilized market. So they're beginning to curb their price point or their expectations and think, okay, right, that is a good price. I need to exit now. Because the price I'm getting for the next property is a similar price point level anyway as well. So you're not overpaying for the next property and you're not getting overpaid for your property, if that makes sense. So you're like for like in terms of the housing market. Zoopla goes on to say that growing confidence among sellers is boosting the number of homes for sale, which are about 21% higher than a year ago. More supply is increasing choice for would-be buyers and supporting sales overall. Now, while increased activity levels are welcome news, it's important to note that a smaller proportion of sellers continue to reduce asking prices to attract buyer interest. Asking price reductions are lower than a year ago, but remain above average. Evidence of continued price sensitivity amongst buyers is definitely there. Asking price reductions of 5% or more are greatest in the south, east, and the east of England. Let me show you a graph on here. This is Northeast and London lead sales, as you see here. Let me just pop that up on the screen. You'll see that here. So this graph here, if I zoom in on that so you can see it a bit better on screen, there you go. It says Northeast and London lead on sales agreed. This is year-on-year changes. You can see there we've got Scotland, year-on-year change in Scotland for sales agreed has gone up 8% in Scotland. Northeast is 17% higher. You can see it reducing all the way down. Now, the number of sales agreed in Scotland is actually quite interesting at 8% because it's lower than the rest of it. But I think Scotland's still got a wee bit to go because their price point is still marginally higher and still doing quite well, whereas England is actually in a negative reduction in price in terms of price point. Scotland's still actually faring quite well and just over, and maybe about the 3% level as well in terms of the asking price, up 3% year on year. Zoopla then goes on to say the rate of house price falls falls slow on rising sales. So what do they mean by that? Well, the average estate agent is agreeing 6 new sales a month, up from 5.2 a year ago. So there's more sales in the market, which is good news for the health of the market. This is evidence that house prices don't need to fall to support growing sales volumes. This is feeding through into Zoopla's UK house price index, which continues to record the slowdown in the rate price falls. So, in other words, the rate price falls is actually slowing down. Annual house price inflation is currently minus 0.5%, up from the recent low of minus 1.4% in October in 2023 recorded. The average UK house price, according to Zoopla, is 1.5% below the peak of October 2022 at 268,000. Now, they go on to say, though, slowing price falls is a trend being recorded across all regions and countries in the UK. Five southern English regions are registering annual price falls of up to 2.1%. So they're no double digit. They're not anywhere near double digit like what we were talking about at the beginning of last year. You know, it was almost like calamity and base rates are rising. We better panic and run for the hills. There's a recession coming and a house price crash. It's nothing like that at all. Literally, you're minus 2.1% in terms of price fall, and that's in five southern English regions across in England. Now, this is led by the east of England. House price inflation has moved into positive territory, which is remaining four regions in England, and in addition to Wales, in addition to Scotland, positive prices, and Northern Ireland, which annual price inflation is 4.3% up. So see that how the other end, one end of the spectrum is 2.1% down, and the other end of the spectrum in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, and also in Wales, and four regions of England, there's an average price inflation increase of year on year of 4.3%. So what does this all mean? Well, there's a three-speed housing market, according to Zoopla. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at this and drill in this in a bit more detail. Um, Higher mortgage rates and the cost of living pressures have driven a rapid slowdown in the rate of house price inflation over the last 18 months. There's some notable variations in price inflation across the country, which are primarily explained by the relative affordability of housing. So the current housing trend fall into the three groups. This is a three-speed housing market we're talking about. Well, over the UK, when we get into context. So southern England regions, covering, for example, the east of England, south east, and the west southwest regions, these are the registered the largest annual price falls. Rising mortgage rates and reduced household buying power have hit higher price markets harder than more affordable markets, like Scotland, for example. The average house price or home price is 344,000 in these areas, the southern England regions, 30% above the UK average. The pace of price falls is starting to moderate in southern England, but it's lagging other areas of the UK. Let's look at London as the next tier of housing market. Well, Zoopla sees London quite differently than the rest of England. While it still remains the most expensive housing market with the average price of 534,000, wow, almost two times the UK average. However, weak house price inflation over the last 7 years has improved affordability and opened the market to more potential buyers than before. The rebound in demand and low growth in the supply of homes for sale, well, that's just about 7% in London versus 21% in the rest of the UK, explains why house price inflation is rebounding quicker in the southern England regions. Here's the third speed of the UK housing market right now. This is the rest of the UK taking into account, and we'll talk about that just now. While house price growth has slowed rapidly over the last 12 months, annual price falls have been very limited across the rest of the UK, where the average house prices are 28% below the UK level. That's the whole UK. So the rest of the UK, third tier, is 28% below the rest of the UK level. This explains why the impact on buying power from higher mortgage rates outside southern England has been less pronounced. In other words, it's not a huge drop in prices. It's actually an increase, so to speak, of 4%. Their index, Zoopla's index, actually shows the Scottish house prices remain in positive territory. So Scottish house prices remain in positive territory over the whole of last year. Northern regions in England and West Midlands and Wales are registering firmer prices in response to rising sales and better levels of housing affordability. Here's a graph to demonstrate that. And we can see right here. If you zoom in on that, what have we got here? Well, right at the top here, we have the south. We have south, which is the year-on-year house price inflation. You can see at the south it started at 4% in the pink line as we go through, and it jumped up. This is from January 2018, jumped right up, way up to about 14% almost in January 2022 at the boom, and then dropped like a stone but it's starting to recover. It's at the bottom just now. Scotland, look at Scotland in purple, very, very stable. Look at all the rest of them. They go boom and then massive drop. Look at how Scotland responds. That purple line straight across as I'm doing my arrow right across there. Straight, steady, 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 every single year. A slight boom, nothing huge in reaction, and then a slight reduction as well. Nothing huge, but consistently since 2018, the Scottish house prices have remained, according to Zoopla, in positive territory. In other words, Scottish house prices have not dropped. They've steadily increased. What I love about the Scottish housing market is it doesn't react with huge swings in volatility to sensitivity and risk involved. Where England goes up and house prices massively down and up and down, the Scottish housing market stays a nice, stable, just slightly wave, like a wavy line right across on itself. And that's how it stays. So Scottish house prices are still in very well in positive territory overall. So let's talk finally, and we'll go on and we'll talk about the outlook in a minute, where we are right now. Mortgage rates fall, but they remain above 4%. Falling mortgage rates, for example, have been an important catalyst for improving market sentiment and increased levels of housing market activity in the recent weeks. Faster earnings growth and the rising incomes are also starting to offset the impact of higher borrowing costs, albeit quite slowly though. Mortgage rates have actually fallen back to where they were a year ago, which is good news. This could actually explain why we've got a good start to this year, because mortgage rates last in year on year, when you compare that, that's where that activity is coming from, because mortgage rates are actually falling back to where they were a year ago, so they're comparable. This recent decline is likely to plateau at the current levels. I think so, yeah. Lenders have been pulling mortgage deals below 4% as the cost of finance used to fund the mortgages has increased modestly in the recent weeks. So this is what I said, and you know, at the beginning of this broadcast, the fact that some of the mortgage lenders are actually starting to pull some of their products and promote just a wee bit higher in terms of the interest rates, because the interbank lending is now getting a bit more expensive in comparison. Interbank lending's not linked to the base rates that the Bank of England sets. It's swap rates between the banks and how they lend in the money markets. That's the most important thing for them. Buyers should also anticipate, this is key here, Zoopla goes on to say buyers should also anticipate 4 to 5% mortgage rates over much of 2024. It is here to stay, regardless of what anybody says about interest rates falling dramatically. I I don't see evidence, compelling evidence at this point in time to suggest that. Unemployment's still historically low, inflation's still around about the 4% mark, base rate's still at 5.25 now. You have got things going on in the world. You've got the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. You've also got the conflict in the Red Sea between the oil tankers and some of the supply tankers going into the Suez Canal being hijacked by pirates. Who would be talking about pirates? There's something like a story, but it's factual. So you've got turmoil in there as well, and you've still got the war in Ukraine going on with Russia as well, which obviously impacts on supply chain, which actually then restricts the amount of supply, which then pushes up the demand, which then pushes up the price. So inflation will probably stay around about what it is, and the bank will be determined to move that down to the 2% mark, which they're actually benchmarking for. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the budget, Jeremy Hunt's budget in March, the early March, and see what's going to happen there, and whether he's going to try and cut some taxes in order to stimulate. There's talk he's possibly going to look at national insurance contributions for employees and actually work on that rather than income tax reductions. Okay, so Zoopla goes on to say then they're consistently held at the mortgage rates at 5%, that are at the tipping point for the annual house price falls. Mortgage rates of over 6% for a sustained period could lead to a larger double-digit price fall. So that's what we don't want, because we want stability in the house price market and also in the transactional market. Mortgage rates in the 4 to 5% range are consistent with a flat to single-digit price rises. Let's look at this in graph form. So mortgage rates in graph. This is from February 2014. So as we zoom right in there, you can see February 2014. I'll just zoom in for you. This is mortgage rate fall and set to remain between 4 and 5%, they reckon. But you can see where the mortgage rates were in 2014, falling through to 2015. They started to fall dramatically down to the 2% level in 2017, and they stayed round about that level in 2017, as you'll see right along there, and they dropped to almost about between 1.5%. And then along came the boom, and along came inflationary pressure, and then that's when mortgage rates started to climb as a natural result, because base rates went up as well and pushed all the swap rates up. Disastrous budget by Liz Truss. Yeah, we can't get away from that, which has caused this spike in here, mortgage rates going up. And then that was sorted out. She was basically asked to leave, and another Prime Minister and Chancellor took over and stabilised the market and brought mortgage rates down. The swap rates between banks became a lot better, hence the reason mortgage rates were able to come down. And then that went back up again because inflationary pressure in the marketplace itself. And now it's come back. Swap rates are in a better condition as well. So there we are. So you can see there, we're right back at 2023 at the same period in time. I'll just zoom in on that again, show you. See there, 2023, about 4.5, and 2024, we're sitting at 4.5 for mortgage rates overall. Let's just wrap up then. What is the outlook? Sales are more likely to rise than house prices this year. So what do we mean by that? Well, there's clear demand from homeowners and first-time buyers. First-time buyers are back in their droves, looking to move and buy their first home in 2024. This is ongoing support and higher sales volumes, but Zoopla don't expect higher house price growth. In reality, is that the housing market is still adjusting to higher mortgage rates and the impact of reduced buying power. There's no doubt about it. A couple of years ago, with interest rates so low, your buying power was, £800 maybe get you a £200,000 mortgage. But £800 now would probably only get you about £140,000 mortgage. So that's the difference. So it's the amount of money you've got to spend every month for your mortgage, and the interest rate's been so high, you're paying a lot more interest. Therefore, the affordability level for the mortgage itself drops as a result. So that's why they say in reality the housing market is still adjusting to higher mortgage rates, and the impact of reduced buying power, and the impact of which has actually varied across the country. This is the key here. Sellers need to remain realistic on pricing and celebrate the fact that their home is likely to attract more buyer interest, increasing the chances of agreeing a sale. Mortgage rates could have moved a little lower over the year, but this really hinges on the timing of the future base rate cuts, which may come later this year, possibly. That's a possibly, remember. Finally, the sales market momentum has been building over the last 5 months. Zoopla believes that the market is on track for 10% more sales in 2024. In other words, another 100,000 properties sold than last year. That's good news, because another 100,000 properties sold, and if you've got 100,000 and you multiply it by, say, 15,000 for each refurb and improvements and furniture and all the rest of it, people normally get when they move, that will inject another actually 1.5 billion in money into local businesses that service this industry. So that's really good. Last year it was, it dropped dramatically from the year before, and it's now stabilizing back to where it is. So, good news ahead, I think, for more supply, and it's really boosting the potential for growth in sales. It is important, though, however, that sellers don't start expecting more for their homes. That's what Zoopla goes on to say. So it is important the sellers don't start expecting more for their homes. Be realistic in your pricing. Be realistic in your expectations. If you're going to make an offer to someone which is round about the home report value for the property you're buying, then please bear in mind and expect that your property is probably going to go for a similar price around the home report value or just over as well. You can't expect the days of having 20% or 10% more for your house unless there's something fantastic about it. It's very unique. It's appealing to these people who want to pay more, but there's no expectation that you should be getting, I want 10% or 20% more for mine. But I'm only prepared to pay home report on the one that I'm buying. Like, that's no apples and apples and, pears and pears. Going back to my primary school, eh? Who would have thought? Who would have thought that that phrase at primary school would have stood me in good stead for broadcasting later on? Who would have thought that? Anyway, let's finally just finish off by looking right across the region, the percentages as we go on the map of the UK. Let's zoom in and see. So you've got there Scotland, according to Zoopla house prices, remember, for published February. According to Zoopla, house prices in Scotland are still 2.2% higher year on year. Northern Ireland 4.3, Northwest 0.7, Northeast 0.6, Yorkshire and Humberside 0.3, Midlands, Wales 0.3, and then you can see round about the London area and the south of England actually are the ones having the slow decreases in prices. Not a huge amount, remember, not a huge amount at all. So therefore, the consensus is stabilized market. That's it. A nice, stable, steady housing market. Transaction numbers are doing well, if not up year on year, and house prices will remain stabilized, if not gradually increasing year on year by a smaller amount than expected than before. Until next time, guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to put something in the comments. I'm Jim Parker for Fife Properties TV.